There's this old romantic image of business that we all sort of cling to. The lone wolf founder, the company that builds everything from scratch, dominates the market, and crushes the competition into dust. It's very cinematic.
Cinematic, sure, but totally obsolete. If you try to play the game that way today, you aren't going to be the hero of the movie, you're going to be the cautionary tale.
That's a strong opening. So, if the kill or be killed, isolationist approach is dead, what's replacing it? Because looking at the headlines, it still feels pretty cutthroat out there.
It is cutthroat, but the weapons have changed. We aren't fighting with swords anymore, we're fighting with networks. Today, we're talking about strategic alliances. And honestly, this is the most misunderstood concept in corporate strategy. People confuse it with mergers, or acquisitions, or just casual networking. But it's none of those things. It's something far more delicate, and frankly, far more dangerous.
Dangerous? I thought we were talking about collaboration, kumbaya, holding hands, sharing resources. Why dangerous?
Because a true strategic alliance is like letting a stranger into your house to help you cook dinner. Yes, the meal might be amazing because they brought ingredients you don't have. But you also have to watch them to make sure they aren't stealing the silverware or learning your secret family recipes so they can open a restaurant next door.
Okay, I love that image. So, let's strip it back. When we say strategic alliance in a formal sense, what are we actually defining?
At its core, it is an agreement between two or more independent firms to share resources or capabilities to achieve a specific goal. And the keyword there is independent. They aren't merging. They aren't buying each other. They remain separate entities, but they agree to link a part of their operations. It's not a marriage. It's a very serious, legally binding long-term relationship.
So, dating with a contract?
Exactly. Dating with a contract and a lot of money on the table. And companies do this because, quite simply, they've hit a wall. Maybe they have a great product but no distribution channel in Asia. Or maybe they have a massive customer base but their technology is 5 years behind. You can try to build that missing piece yourself, which takes years and millions of dollars, or you can partner with someone who already has it.
That sounds logical. It's the buy versus build decision. But with a third option, partner. But if it's so logical, why do so many of these fail? I've read stats suggesting that something like 60% to 70% of strategic alliances underperform or fall apart.
The failure rate is huge, and it usually isn't because the math didn't work. On paper, these deals almost always look brilliant. I have X, you have Y, together we make Z. The problem is almost always human. It's culture, and it's trust.
Can you dig into that? What does a culture clash look like when you aren't actually merging the companies?
Imagine a massive legacy manufacturing giant. They move slow, they have 12 layers of approval for a press release, and they value risk aversion above all else. Now they form an alliance with a scrappy Series B AI startup because they need that tech. The startup moves at the speed of light, breaks things, and pivots weakly.
I can see the disaster coming. The startup gets suffocated.
Or the giant gets terrified. The startup views the giant as a dinosaur that can't make a decision. The giant views the startup as a reckless, chaotic mess. They speak different languages. Even if the strategic goal is aligned, let's put AI in these cars, the operational reality is a nightmare.
So how do the successful ones make it work? Is it just about picking a partner that looks like you?
No, actually, you usually want a partner that doesn't look like you because you want their unique capabilities. The success comes down to governance and clarity. You need to define exactly who decides what. But more importantly, you have to manage the learning race.
The learning race. That sounds competitive.
It is. This is the dirty little secret of alliances. In many partnerships, especially between a large firm and a smaller one, there is a race to learn the other partner's skills. If I partner with you to learn your manufacturing process, once I've learned it, do I still need you?
Oof. So the alliance has an expiration date based on how fast I can steal your know-how?
Absorb is the polite term, but yes, this is why you have to be careful about what you share. You want to share enough to make the project work, but not so much that you hollow out your own competitive advantage. It's a transparency paradox. Too much secrecy, the project fails. Too much openness, you create a future competitor.
That brings us back to the danger you mentioned at the start. It feels like walking a tightrope. But let's flip to the positive side. When this works, when the stars align, what is the magnitude of the payoff?
It's exponential. Think about the airline industry. Star Alliance, One World. No single airline can fly to every city in the world. It's physically and financially impossible. But by forming an alliance, United or Lufthansa can sell you a ticket to a tiny airport in a country they don't even operate in. They instantly expand their global footprint without buying a single new plane. That is the power of scale without the cost of assets.
That's a great example. It's efficiency. But I'm curious about innovation. We see a lot of alliances now in tech and pharma. Big pharma giants partnering with tiny biotech labs.
That is the classic risk-sharing model. Developing a new drug costs billions and might fail. If a big company does that alone, one failure can tank the stock. If they form alliances with 10 different biotech firms, they spread their bets. They provide the funding and the regulatory muscle, the boring stuff, and the small labs provide the genius innovation. It's a perfect symbiosis.
It seems like the definition of a firm is getting blurry. If I'm outsourcing my R&D to a partner, and my logistics to another partner, and my marketing to an agency, what is my company actually?
That is the philosophical question of the decade. We are moving from the firm to the node. Companies are becoming nodes in a value network. Your value isn't just what you own, it's how well you connect. The most successful companies today, think about the smartphone ecosystem, aren't just building products. They are orchestrating a massive web of partners, app developers, and component suppliers.
Orchestration. That's a powerful word. It implies you don't have to own the instruments to conduct the symphony.
Precisely, but here is the catch. To be the conductor, you have to be trusted. In the old days, power came from hoarding information. I know something you don't, so I win. In an alliance-based economy, power comes from sharing information. If you are known as a partner who screws people over, who hides data, who bullies the little guy, eventually you will find yourself isolated. And in a networked economy, isolation is death.
So reputation becomes a tangible asset. It's not just PR, it's your ticket to the next alliance.
100%. I've seen companies with superior technology fail because nobody wanted to work with them. They were too arrogant or too legalistic. Meanwhile, companies with good enough tech win because they are frictionless partners. They understand that 50% of a huge pie is better than 100% of a crumb.
Let's talk about the specific types of alliances, because I think people get confused by the jargon. We hear joint venture a lot. Is that just a fancy word for an alliance?
A joint venture, or JV, is the deepest end of the pool. That's when two companies actually birth a third company. Company A puts in money, Company B puts in tech, and they create Company C. They both own shares in C. That is heavy. It requires new management, new HR, separate books. It's the most stable, but the hardest to unwind if things go wrong.
Right. That's the having a kid analogy.
Exactly. You can't just walk away. Then you have equity strategic alliances, where maybe I buy 5% of your company just to cement our partnership. It's a blood oath. It says, I have skin in the game.
And on the lighter side?
Non-equity alliances. These are just contracts. Marketing agreements, supply chain agreements. I'll sell your coffee in my bookstores. These are flexible, easy to start, easy to end. But because they are easy to end, partners might not be as committed.
That bookstore example, Starbucks and Barnes & Noble, that's a classic. It seems so obvious now, but at the time, it was a strategic leap.
It was brilliant. Barnes & Noble wanted people to linger. Starbucks wanted to sell premium coffee where people were relaxing. Neither cannibalized the other. If Barnes & Noble started roasting their own beans or Starbucks started selling bestsellers, the alliance would collapse. They stayed in their lanes.
Stay in your lane. That seems like a golden rule here. But markets converge, don't they? What happens when your partner's lane starts drifting into yours? We see this in big tech all the time. Everyone wants to be the everything app.
That is the phenomenon of co-opetition. Cooperation and competition simultaneously. You see it with Samsung and Apple. Samsung supplies screens and chips for the iPhone while simultaneously fighting a brutal war against the iPhone in the handset market.
That blows my mind. How do you sit in a boardroom and say, we need to make our biggest rival's product better?
Because the money is too good to ignore. If Samsung refused to sell to Apple, Apple would just buy from LG or someone else. Samsung loses billions in revenue and Apple still gets the screens. So they compartmentalize. The component division loves Apple. The mobile division hates Apple. It requires incredible emotional and organizational maturity.
Emotional maturity in business. That's a rare commodity.
It is, and that's why I think the future belongs to the soft skills. We spend so much time teaching MBAs how to calculate net present value or analyze a balance sheet. We don't spend enough time teaching them empathy, negotiation, and cultural intelligence. Because managing an alliance is fundamentally about managing relationships.
It's interesting you say that. It sounds like the role of the CEO is shifting from general to diplomat.
That is a perfect way to put it. The general commands, the diplomat negotiates. In a strategic alliance, you cannot command your partner. You have no authority over their employees. You have to influence them. You have to sell them on the vision every single day. If you go in there barking orders, the alliance dies.
I want to circle back to something you touched on earlier, the idea of ecosystems. If we look 10 or 20 years into the future, do you think the standalone company will exist at all? Or will everything be these fluid, shifting clusters of alliances?
I think the standalone company is already a myth, but it will become even more pronounced. Look at the complexity of problems we're trying to solve. Climate change, space travel, personalized genomic medicine. No single company has the brainpower or the capital to solve these alone. We are going to see mission-oriented alliances.
Mission-oriented?
Yes. Groups of companies coming together not just for a quarter's profit, but to solve a specific industry-level problem. Once the problem is solved, they might disband and reform in different configurations. It's like Hollywood. A crew comes together to make a movie, lighting, sound, actors, director. They work intensely for 6 months, create something amazing, and then disperse to work on other projects. I think corporate structures will look more like Hollywood crews.
That is a fascinating, slightly terrifying, but very liberating concept. The Hollywood model for the Fortune 500.
It's agile, but it requires a high-trust society, and that's the deeper philosophical hurdle. Can we build legal and social structures that support that kind of fluidity? Because right now, our contracts are designed for rigidity. We try to predict every bad thing that could happen and write a clause for it. That slows everything down.
So, the lawyers might be the biggest obstacle to this utopian future of seamless alliances?
Lawyers are paid to protect us from risk. But in the new economy, the biggest risk is moving too slow because you were arguing over the fine print. Sometimes, you just have to shake hands and start running.
That brings us to a great closing thought. We've talked about the mechanics, the risks, the culture clashes, and the future. If there is one listener out there, maybe a founder, maybe a manager, who is hesitating to sign a partnership deal right now because they are afraid of losing control, what do you tell them?
I would tell them that control is an illusion. You don't control the market, you don't control the customer, and you barely control your own employees. Clinging to control usually means clinging to mediocrity. The question isn't, what do I lose by partnering? The question is, what universe of possibilities do I close off by trying to be a hero on my own?
Clinging to control means clinging to mediocrity. That is going to stick with me.
It's the lesson I learned the hard way. The biggest piece of the pie doesn't matter if the pie is tiny. Go bake a bigger pie even if you have to share the kitchen.
A bigger pie, a shared kitchen, and hopefully, no one's stealing the silverware. This has been an incredibly illuminating look into the machinery of strategic alliances. It's not just business, it's psychology, it's diplomacy, and it's the future of how we get things done.
It's always a pleasure to dig into this. Thanks for having me.
And for everyone listening, take a look at your own network. Your next biggest competitive advantage might not be a new product, it might be a phone call away. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.